Welcome to the Tao of Sports podcast with Troy Kirby, covering sports business with over 300 industry leaders from across the globe. Now, here is your host, Troy Kirby.
Well, thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast. I'm Troy Kirby, along with episode 889 of the podcast. Today's guest is Justin Rogers of Boise State. Fantastic, because this is a great connection in the sense that he has been part of the NAATSO board. That's the National Athletic Association of Ticket Sales and Operation. That is your College Athletic Ticket Association board that was created back in, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, wow, that's now I'm old. I think I was old before, but that actually kind of makes a lot of sense. He's going to actually be down in Vegas when this episode comes out. So will I, because we're going to come back with past presidents of NAATSO and talk about all the wonderful things that we did. I'm still a little surprised that anything happens with college athletics in Vegas. I know that everything has changed to where I used to fear going into a casino, even in the regular part in Vegas, because of the fact I worked in college athletics. And now it's just all over the place. Everything, sports betting and whatever. And it bewilders me. But Justin Rogers has a lot of great things that he's doing, especially initiatives both with ticket sales and revenue generation at Boise State. And I thought it would be a great conversation coming into NAATSO week. So everybody who's down in NAATSO, maybe this will load onto your phones, or you'll get it as you board the plane to come back from NAATSO. Who knows? But always fantastic to have listeners. And Justin actually said that he has been one for a while and was surprised when the podcast came back. So I'm glad to at least make one person happy. It's Justin Rogers right here in episode 889 of the Tao of Sports. Justin, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. One of the fascinating things that I saw was that your resource development. Explain exactly what resource development is. We've had all these new titles come around. Does it just basically mean that, everything revenue-wise you're in charge of?
Yeah, it's a fancy term for revenue generation. That's for sure. You could definitely say it in that context. I always like to say to people that don't really understand what I do, that basically at the end of the day, my job is to create and maximize revenue opportunities for Boise State Athletics. So we have 18 different sport programs, 350 plus student athletes that, yes, we have to support financially. That's just the bottom line. If we want to be able to provide positive outcomes for our student athletes and ultimately for our fans too, they want to see us win. So we have to be creative about, finding ways to continuously, fund success.
With the success that Boise State has had, really it's kind of grown. There's always been that big football stadium and that always encroachment of whether or not you can fill the last 3,000 seats, right? I mean, that's always been,
Yep.
Even in Mean Gene's time, that was always the big one, right? Anita used to tell me about that back in the day. Love Anita G. But at the same time, have you been able to figure out ways to cap that and get that going to where it gets that sellout experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So our current athletic director, Jeremiah Dickey, he always talks about, you'll see the slogan on social media. He's super active, but 6 games, 6 sellouts. And that's the expectation here. It's a lofty expectation to live up to, and one that frankly, we haven't actually accomplished yet, but we've been inching closer and closer over the past several years. And I think we've got a great chance at it this year. I will say, compared to what you put in Mean Gene and Anita, when they were here, Anita was great. I got to work with her for a little bit. She actually helped hire me on here. So I'm super appreciative for, the opportunity she helped provide me here. But the Treasure Valley is just growing so fast. We have so many new residents. We are very well positioned as far as the sports entertainment options go locally. So, and also the other thing is we were just blessed to have a great brand. People move into the area. A lot of people moving in off the coast. They come to Boise and they don't know much about it, but they know Boise State and they know the blue. So we have 2 incredible marketing opportunities right there. And then now over the past couple of years, we've brought on an outbound sales team, right? And then we've been so much more proactive, probably, since the pandemic coming back and everything, as far as just being aggressive about generating support and not sitting and waiting for people to come, but finding groups out there in the community, finding new residents, targeting them, bringing them into the fold. And then also I'll give our ticket operations team just a tremendous amount of credit for the way that they're able to manage our inventory. They do such a great job. We might have a game where we get to 33,000 out instead of 36,000 tickets out, and they dress up the building like crazy and still make it feel like an incredibly impactful environment for both our student athletes and our fans who are there, and trying to get them to come back time and time again. So it's a total team effort, and you can't do it without them.
One of the things that kind of comes out from Boise State is the amazing story that it has. And of course, this is even longer than you, but 81, they were, I want to say, just barely Division II, right? And they were always seen kind of in the shadow of Idaho, that rivalry.
Yep.
And they moved up as they moved up. And I want to say it was 97 with Idaho because of competition. And they didn't want to be a D2 not a D2, but an NAI or a D1 double A, right? So they didn't want that designation. And they ended up becoming the one that sparked, and they became the one that grew. And you're now in a legacy position to where you have to keep that going because, yeah, you do have Chris that was there and all that, and you've had a few coaches since.
Yep.
And yeah, it's football, but isn't it an overall brand that Boise State keeps growing at that has really kind of been something that you guys have had to keep reinforcing?
Yeah, it is a really unique predicament, right? Again, this is a position that I walked into. I did nothing to contribute towards that success, over the past 20 to 40 years. That's nothing I had a hand in at all. But we are inherent. We do inherit a heck of a brand, a heck of a story, and a really, really unique identity too. When you think about a lot of programs out there, they can kind of hang their hat on being really innovative, and a lot of other programs hang their hat on being sort of a hardworking mentality, right? We're kind of the blend of both. Like, you can show up here and you do have to have a blue collar mentality. There's no doubt about it. That is kind of baked into the cake here. I think we draw those types of people, but also at the same time, we have the blue turf, right? So we call it blue turf thinking, meaning that we're never going to have more resources than our competitors, right? We're always going to be kind of fighting that battle. But you got to be creative, so we find ways to get things done here, and kind of rally around each other and understand, what our options are, and try not to look at every single problem the same way. We try to keep an open mind and bring people in that have different viewpoints, and really kind of tackle our challenges together. Like I said, I think a lot of places kind of lean one way more towards the other. If it's, a hardworking place, or if it's a innovative place, and then here's Boise State that just does both at a really, really high level. So, I don't know why that is. I think it's just something that's really special here. And I think a lot of people here recognize that though too. And, when they think about those things and why they appreciate being here, it's to be a part of a culture like that.
One of the remarkable things about Boise State is that it is a big university in a capital city. If you look at most capital cities, especially on the West Coast, that is just not the case, right? I mean, you can go down the list of Oregon or, Nevada or California. Sacramento, though, is a big population. Sacramento State, not a mega school.
Sure.
But the difference is that they also don't have a gigantic arena that they've got to fill because you have Taco Bell, arena that you've got to fill. And, that's quite a tall order. How have you gone about doing that? You've got an amazing coach. I was mentioning before we recorded, I love Leon Rice personally. He's always very sweet to me. But, how do you make sure that that's something that, you can really continue to grow and foster?
Yeah, you mentioned so we do have the arena's since been named to Extra Mile Arena. So just to keep you up to date on your lingo there, so nobody else calls you out. But yeah, Extra Mile Arena, it's a 12,000.
I have to say, this is where my grandfather comes in. My grandfather was a genius at this. They didn't pay me to say it, so go for it.
So yeah, Extra Mile Arena, it's a 12,000 seat arena, and you kind of mentioned before, right, the fact that we are a large and growing university. That yes, our background, fundamental identity is in football. There's no doubt about it, and we don't hide from that. We certainly embrace it. But at the same time, we are in a larger capital city. We do have a large influx of new residents here. We have a good population base. We are well positioned as far as sports entertainment options go in our market, and we have this 12,000 seat basketball arena right across the parking lot from the football stadium. And they have a lot more basketball games than we do football. So when we look at opportunities to grow and also develop fandom, we're still not an old university. I don't even know if we're 50 years old yet. It's super young. Like as you mentioned before, we haven't been Division I all that long in the grand scheme of things. So that's just opportunity for us to continue cultivating our fan base. And when you look at the larger universities out there, right, the Ohio States of the world, right, the Floridas, they have, yes, they have their football fans, but they're fans of everything, and they get incredible support across the board. It doesn't matter what the sport is, what's going on. They have kind of the weight of their fan base behind them, and that's the opportunity that we have here. That's something that we've definitely been, thanks to Coach Rice and obviously the contributions of our coaches and our student athletes with the basketball program. We've gone to 3 straight NCAA tournaments. We're having success that we've never had in that program. And so, yes, we have our football program, which really kind of anchors our identity, but we're really able to start tapping into that basketball potential now. And we've been, I think we're, maybe top 30 something in the country in terms of average attendance. We're, one of the most highly attended programs out in the West, whether it be in the mountain region or on the coast. So yeah, all the numbers are bearing out where the success that they're having, we're able to, capitalize on that in terms of fan support and fan development too. As I mentioned, just being able to take people that come to a few football games a year. But now if we can start layering in a few basketball games, we're doubling the number of events and the number of times that they're coming to our campus and engaging with our product. So I'm incredibly grateful, like I said, for the success that they've had, but also incredibly grateful of the job that our team has done in terms of translating that success into further support.
Well, so this is where the challenge comes because you are in a market that has all minor league sports for pro sports.
Yep.
In a way, you don't have a major league product there that is what I would call traditional, etc. So these minor league teams can basically do all the crazy zany stuff. How do you keep up with that, and how do you get it to where your fans are educated enough to continue to build that fan development when a lot of times they're waiting for the crazy zany I don't care about the score mentality when you guys obviously do?
Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about it that way. That we kind of do kind of carry that banner a little bit of being the quote unquote pro team here in the marketplace compared to the Steelheads who do a great job on hockey. The Hawks who do a great job over in baseball. They're the ones that can kind of get a little bit more creative and certainly have some fun in that regards. We still have a lot of fun too, though. We're very fortunate, like I said, to have that be part of our brand identity. We do all sorts of fun things, whether that's just a lot of times we really do it more so from like an in-game entertainment, maybe not necessarily from a product offering standpoint, something that somebody's going to see, at home or when they're making a purchasing decision. It's much more, I think we do a good job of blending that into our in-game entertainment, where whether that be the stuff, we got a new South End Zone video board that's one of the biggest in the country, and that was a great gift to us last year that we were able to turn on for the first time. And the amount of fun that I know our production team, our marketing team does a great job of utilizing that bad boy and finding unique ways to engage with the crowd, or whether that's at Extra Mile Arena in basketball, doing a great job there of just kind of still being able to bring our brand to life, maybe in a way that doesn't come across as detrimental, in the marketplace.
So when you're dealing with all of this, it still comes back to gifts and annual gifts and getting them up to that next ladder. But you're also at a school that accepts a lot of transfer students that may be junior college, but also might be a lot of commuter. Nothing against it, but how do you really engage with folks that may or may not have that relationship that somebody has when they're kind of locked in for 4 years, basically to a small college town?
Yeah, certainly. Right. If you go up to State College, Pennsylvania for 4 years to go to Penn State, that's a little bit different story than maybe starting off at, the College of Western Idaho for a year or two, and then transferring into Boise State. And, you've lived pretty much in the same area for a while, and it's not really that much of a difference for those 4 years. That's a true point, but at the same time, I think it just goes back to the fact that we are a growing university. We do every single graduating class is the biggest class we've had, and that's great opportunity for us to keep tapping into it. We have a really great relationship with our advancement team, our university advancement team. Cindy Montgomery is somebody I work with. She's so our president, Marlene Trump, I think she has a great vision for the university in terms of our alumni engagement. She recognizes that we're a really young university. Our graduates skew really young. Like we have more living graduates who graduated in the last 10 years than any year prior than that. So we have a specific person, Sydney Montgomery, who focuses on those years 1 through 10 graduates. That's on the advancement side of things. We do a great job. She recognizes that athletics events are an incredible way to bring those graduates back to campus, keep them engaged with the university, keep coming out to events. Maybe they can't donate yet. They're in their third year out of college and they're paying off student loans and all that good stuff that comes along with becoming an adult. But those are all prospects for down the line that the relationships that we're going to start making those deposits into now, get them engaged, eventually move them on up, right? They start buying their own season tickets. They start getting, hit up from the Bronco Athletic Association about opportunities for them to start donating and benefits that come along with that. And then eventually you just kind of work them up the ladder to becoming a major gift prospect. And obviously that's not for everybody, but it's just a numbers game. And I think, like I said, we do a great job of approaching that from the start in terms of recognizing the opportunity we have with our recent graduates, just the large number that we have and what the future holds there.
It also comes into what donors care about. And I know I'm going to make sweeping statements about generalities of generations, but baby boomers seem to care about their name on a building, right? That was a big thing with them, or giant scholarship gifts. Gen X, my generation, which is a smaller one, really cared about where I was sitting, right? I need to make sure that location, I'll pay into that. I don't know what the millennials care about because they're right now hitting 40. But is there kind of like an indication of what they care about as they try to give? Because they're going to give in a smaller amount for the next probably 15 years until they build up their wealth towards retirement. But
Yep.
what do you think they care about?
Yeah, so this is a major change that we made really within the last 12 months to really our annual giving. Um, for anybody who's listening who hasn't worked in the college space, you have your season ticket price, and it might cost you $1,000 to buy the season ticket. Traditionally, what's happened is you have 750 goes towards your quote unquote ticket cost, and $250 went as a donation. Over the years, that is no longer a tax deductible donation anymore. That $250. So universities still kind of set it up that way, but it's not doesn't have the same implications that it once did. So one of the things that we've done is really looked at our annual giving side of things. Our benefits were, for lack of a better term, they didn't really carry much weight behind them in the past. There was nothing really that people were, they would ask like, hey, if I donate, what do I get? What do I get privileged to? And so we really looked at that as an opportunity to say, okay, learning from what the pros teams do. My background is in ticket sales, so I always follow what the pro teams are doing and the success, obviously, of the membership model, that they've implemented across the board over the last decade. We really looked at that as an opportunity to really integrate that membership model concept into our Bronco Athletic Association, annual giving benefits. So, for instance, now if somebody says, okay, if I give you $500, what do I get from it? But you're gonna get access to head coach luncheons. You're going to have invites to open practices. We're going to send you gift boxes with some merchandise in it. So there's more tangible benefits. That's a big change that we've been able to make because we've stopped counting that $250 per seat donation towards their annual giving benefits. We've made their annual giving benefits based solely upon what they're donating philanthropically, aside from ticket transactions, aside from parking transactions. We've been able to really kind of equate those dollars to true support above and beyond the transactions. And therefore, we've been able to come up with more impactful benefits as a result.
You mentioned the whole Obama rule of taking that out of I think it was the federal budget, having the ability to do that whole deduction for seats or deduction for things. It's
Yeah.
so ridiculous only because they thought they were going after people in the courtside and suites. Do you really think that they were deducting $250 as like this is a big incentive? I mean,
That's not
like
really what, yeah.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is like sometimes I think that people think they're doing something and really they're just getting that one person that wants to be able to write off some little smidgen. I mean, I more
Yep.
laugh about that, not a politics show, but just always kind of funny what we think we're going to impact compared to what we do.
Unintended consequences, right?
Unintended consequences. And this comes to your time at Texas San Antonio, where that might have been more
Yep.
important to those folks because it was, the difference of the write-off was actually something because they might have been itemizing for the first time or whatever. That
Yep.
might have been more important to them than somebody at Boise State who might have more money.
Yeah. Boy, my experience at San Antonio. So UTSA, they've been super successful over the past few years. Jeff Traylor's just an amazing coach, and Lisa Campos, the AD there, they've done an incredible job. I was there more so when Lisa had first gotten there and prior to Jeff Traylor being there. So they were certainly not going 10-2 on the football field at that time. It was more like 2-10, and um, it was that was difficult. You mentioned there too, just the simple fact that, and it's kind of my background too, honestly, is being more used to being a smaller product in a larger market where you have those types of challenges. We were playing in a 65,000 seats Alamo Dome, definitely not drawing those size crowds, and the financial pressures in terms of supporting a program at that level without the size of donor base that other programs have. So yeah, just the financial pressures on those types of people that maybe were taking a $250 write off at that time, itemizing that deduction. Probably not true, like you said, for folks that are sitting in premium seats. They're usually not the ones that are getting their $250 a million different ways in terms of tax implications. So, as opposed to, the average, blue collar worker in the city of San Antonio that was, really, really committing to buying season tickets for, for $1,000, and really depending upon that write-off. That was a unique situation to have to deal with that. But, I think, in the grand scheme of things, right, then all of a sudden we have COVID a couple years later, and that didn't really seem, I think the whole tax thing really paled in comparison in terms of, trying to deal with the challenges.
Well, yeah, either people are out of work or they can't even go to the games.
Yeah.
Let's look at the comparison between Boise State and then what place you worked, which is University of Alabama. Now, you guys, if you sell out, you're like, hey, this is exciting. If you don't sell out or you're even 2 tickets short at Alabama, I mean, I had to explain to somebody once that, going 10-2 in, the Pac-12 or whatever it is now, this is a good year. Going 10-2 in, the SEC, you get fired. And that to me is like, I mean, it's just a different mentality, right? And I have to assume that that even comes when you were the assistant director of ticketing. We don't mess around. This is a problem if we're even short at all.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you think about the scale of budgets, which I get it, right? People look and they'll be like, oh, you've a $200 million operating budget every year. If you miss a little bit on a game, it's okay, you can absorb it. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter what school you're at. Every school is planning to spend every dollar that's coming in. And so if we missed a game, by a couple thousand seats at Alabama, I mean, that's a big dollar amount. That's a couple full-time positions that, maybe we don't have the resources for the following year, or even worse. But yeah, so just the pressure there. And the other thing that people really don't understand when you're working at a place like that is, okay, we might need to sell, we're just kind of coming down to crunch time and we still have a couple thousand tickets to sell. Those couple thousand tickets aren't down in the lower sidelines. Those couple thousand tickets are a mile away from the field. They're on at Bryant Denny Stadium. They're on the north end, so they're facing south, and it's a what, a 2:30 kickoff in the central time zone in late September where it's 100 degrees and it's 90% humidity, and you just had to walk, like I said, you had to walk up a mile long flight of stairs or a ramp to get up to them, and really, really difficult. That's what a lot of people don't understand about those situations. And also with those games too, that was at a time when SEC Network had been up and running, so it's like there wasn't a game that wasn't broadcasted. Didn't matter what the event was, you could always find it on TV. So you're asking people to say, okay, do you want to spend $75 for a crappy seat to watch Alabama, who you love, blow out a team 54-0 by halftime? Or do you just want to stay at home and watch it? And so it was a huge challenge and a big task. And I think when we had first gotten there, they weren't even doing mini plans and stuff, but they already had won a couple of championships under Coach Saban. So there was that sort of law of diminishing returns, right? That sort of were things that kind of maybe not peaked quite yet, but the interest was starting to wane in terms of the willingness to, spend that $75 to basically go watch a half of football against the team that's not up to par against Alabama, and sit in crappy seats on a hot Alabama Saturday afternoon. So we started doing mini plans and starting to be able to package some of those things. And it was a learning experience to go through that, where they were used to selling season tickets and single game tickets, and not a place that had a whole lot of change over the years. And to come in there and start pitching them the ideas of, hey, why don't we take some of our better games and hold some seats back for it and start packaging them with these, that FCS game that we got to play the week before Auburn. And it was really interesting, a really interesting process to go through and start learning a lot about tradition, for sure, and the respect for that. But then also, how do you thread the needle as far as, yes, we're going to still honor tradition and be true to who we are as having the weight of history like Alabama does, but at the same time, you do have to innovate and find new solutions to places, even if the solution isn't necessarily innovative in and of itself.
But that in itself comes into another problem that nobody ever really speaks about, and it might be higher level than you, but you know that Nick Saban or whoever doesn't really care that it's a hot Alabama day. They expect those things sold
Yep.
out. I used to hear from my old athletic director when he worked at Baylor that Kim Mulkey, who women's basketball coach then, would be
Yep.
really upset that there were 10 seats that weren't sold. Like that, it didn't matter if they were in the high rises, right? It just that's also part of the mentality that you also have to embrace. How have you been able to, even take that kind of knowledge or that kind of expectation and make sure that even though, yes, at Boise State we want to sell out, that you don't deal with the irrational behavior, the irrational thing that, yes, I put this in a snowstorm and you should show up at the top level at the highest price.
Well, one of the first things I think about is the importance of telling your story. And I know a lot of times we think of that in terms of, communicating to our fan base. And that's certainly true. We definitely have to tell our story, externally, but I think just as importantly is telling your story internally and to your key internal stakeholders. So whether that's coaches, athletic directors, university president office, right? Like that's some important people that we have to make sure we do a good job of really kind of keeping informed, whether it's leading up to an event and making sure they understand where we at, where are we tracking, no surprises with those types of people. They don't like surprises. So the more that we can inform them on the front end, um, it kind of sets the expectation a little bit. It kind of allows us to maybe influence the expectation a little bit. Um, Maybe give them a better informed expectation, which might help us. And then also too, just giving that when you tell that story, use data and try to put things in terms of historical context. How does it match up to a similar event in the past? Are we doing better? Or are we doing worse? If we have a weather game that all of a sudden happens here for basketball, we are in Idaho. We will get weather from time to time throughout a basketball season, and obviously that can really hurt us. If you're playing a Wednesday night game at 7 o'clock and people are planning to go home and get their kids and come to the game, well, you hit a snowstorm and all of a sudden it's going to take people, an extra hour to get home. Well, there goes the basketball game, so how do you get ahead of that sort of stuff? So it's really kind of taking into account all of those different factors, but then ultimately being able to repackage that into your story that you're trying to communicate to your key stakeholders. And hopefully, we're fortunate here. I think people are generally understanding that, when we do get the right opportunities, things do go right. We do an excellent job. Our team does a great job of capitalizing on that and maximizing the opportunities. Sometimes there are just things that are outside of your control and you can't control it, but can you at least try to make sure that you're still informing those key stakeholders so that way they can have a better informed expectation?
One of the things I noticed of your background is the fact that you've been part of Rotary International, done
Yeah.
some service work. Unfortunately, we get people that just jump into those things merely so they can sell tickets. Phonies, I think, kind of get detected pretty quick, right? Um,
Yes.
is it is it easier when you have worked on that side of it? Rotary International, for those that don't know, complete volunteer organization, service above self, not necessarily, nobody's getting paid. We're doing great things in
Nope.
the community, and usually we don't talk about it. But is it easier to detect whether or not you're coming off as non-genuine now that you've been in a role where you've seen, and let's be honest, it attracts um, unscrupulous people that think that they can come in and just sell something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, is it
Yeah.
easier for you to kind of say, "Hey, I don't want to come off this way," or "Hey, we got to make sure, even though we're selling tickets, that we're not doing it in a way that sounds phony or disingenuous."
Yeah, well, first of all, I commend you for finding that little fun fact out about me. You definitely did your homework to come up with Rotary International in San Antonio, Texas. That was a great experience. So that was at a time when, so my wife and I, we had just got married. We'd moved down to San Antonio, and um, we both went to a Jesuit school, St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. So just believe in that sort of service mindset. That's something that I was a student athlete. She was a student athlete as well. So um, we did a lot of work in the community in West Philadelphia with our respective teams, and that's one of the bigger things I think about from my time as a student athlete that I'm most proud of was honestly the impact that we were able to make in our community. Um, so after getting married, right, so we moved to San Antonio, and I was looking for a way to feel more connected to the community. And I was actually working a sales table for UTSA at the Valero Texas Open golf tournament. And a gentleman came up to me, Russ Rinklin is his name. So shout out to him. He'll never hear this, but shout out to him. He came up to me and we just had a great conversation. And he had talked to me about this club that he's a part of. That's second largest chapter in the United States, and huge club that is well connected, and just thought, business wise, it'd be good for, there's a lot of movers and shakers that are involved in Rotary in San Antonio. So I signed up kind of with his encouragement. He sponsored me, um, and just started getting involved. And I think the more that you just get more involved in those things, you don't do it for business per se. It's much more just being able to make genuine connections with people who are there to serve the community and to make their place a better place for everybody to live. It doesn't matter if it's your neighbor or if it's somebody a town over. It's, we're all part of San Antonio, Texas, and then just trying to make things better for everybody. So I think when you go through that and you're working on a playground project, and down there, Jeff Cavender's a guy who he's a big auto dealer down there, and he's got a big sponsorship with the Spurs and everything, and somebody that I think we were trying to get involved in UTSA athletics at the time. But he runs a big project there every year called Kingdom for Kids. They go into underserved communities and build out playgrounds. And when you're there and you're there with a bunch of service-minded people, and you're covered in dirt and sweat. It's hot as heck in South Texas. And, then you look over and you see Jeff Cavender's up there on his backhoe, just going at it, trying to just rip up some old junk. I think it just kind of brings you together, and it kind of makes you realize you're like, yeah, of course, like, we'll benefit by doing this enough times, right? And then Jeff Cavender started to understand who I was and who I represented, and maybe that made it easier for, maybe for our athletic director to get in with him and get a meeting and stuff. But when you're doing things for the right reason with people that are also there for genuine purpose, I think it makes it easier to spot in all walks of life. And especially now when we're hiring people to join our team, we are very selective about who joins our team. We're working college sports, so we don't have a 50-person sales team. We only have a handful. So the last thing we're going to do is bring people on that we have red flags about, or you kind of have that gut feeling that maybe it's just not a right fit. It does make it a lot easier to spot when you've been, kind of committed to those types of roles in the past.
And that's what I was kind of getting at is, you get a lot of people, and look, I get them on, the education side. They always have this misunderstanding of what they're going to do in sports, and they almost seem a little bit discriminatory towards what sports they'll be a part of, not realizing in college sports, I get to care as much about women's basketball as I do football. And people, that might come as a surprise
Yep.
because everyone just believes that king football, but whatever it is, women's gymnastics or whatever. And I use a lot of women's sports mainly because people like to kind of blow them off. But
Yeah.
honestly, if you don't see people giving buy-in for the right reason, isn't that a better bolt detector than anything else that you can do? You know?
100%. And one of the cool things we do here, I'm not sure how many places out there do it. I've had other athletic directors, hear about this concept, and they've reached out to Jeremiah about it. So a lot of times I end up talking to them to kind of educate them on how we operate here. But one of the things we do is we call them external pods. So for each of our sport programs, especially the ones that we ticket, we have an external pod team that really supports that sport program. So that external pod team is going to consist of people from, that have expertise in different aspects of external operations. So whether that's ticketing, marketing, fundraising, communications, creative services, a lot of those types of backgrounds, right? Kind of all coming together to serve that sport. And they meet all year round, 12 months out of the year, they're meeting, whether it's the off season and they're talking about, let's get our plans in order, understanding, somebody from the coaching staff or somebody from the sport administration side is involved at all those meetings as well. A lot of times with our Olympic programs, like you mentioned, our women's sports, a lot of times our head coaches are present in those meetings, and having that direct communication with the people that are ultimately supporting their program off the field and trying to generate more support for their program. So they meet 12 months out of the year. Obviously we kind of increase the frequency as the season gets going, and but what's cool about it is it gives everybody a chance. So you think about our sales team here or our fundraising team, it gives everybody a chance to be directly involved in supporting sport programs. And to your point, you don't just get to walk in here. Yes, you might be as a ticket sales rep, so you're selling Boise State football, of course, but you don't just get to walk in here and be part of the Boise State football external team. You're going to start with softball. You're going to start with women's basketball. You're going to start with gymnastics. Shout out Tellier Lundquist on our team here. So he came in last summer and took on gymnastics as one of his sport pods, the external pods that he's a part of, and just went at it from a ticket sales perspective, and that's great. It's like our gymnastics program, who, let's call it what it is, has not really received a whole ton of support. All of a sudden now they have this whole weight of an administrative team behind them who's fired up about generating positive outcomes for Boise State gymnastics. And that can mean, tripling our season ticket number, tripling our attendance number. Let's, have one theme night, where we just absolutely blow it out with the Eras theme that they did in terms of in honor of Taylor Swift and the concert mania that's happening behind that brand. And the best part about all of that is all that support is ultimately trickling down towards our student athlete experience. Our girls get to go out there and compete in their various disciplines, and in front of bigger crowds that are more passionate and enthusiastic about Boise State gymnastics, and they're there to support them and cheer them on. And those are memories that they'll take with them for a lifetime. And then internally, in terms of professional development, you kind of have a chance to come in and cut your teeth and improve yourself, and Jeremy Malnus is another example on our team who came in and did a great job in his respective sport pods that he was a part of. And now he's earned his way up to be part of the men's basketball external pod now. And he just wrapped up his first season there on that front and did an amazing job. And I know he learned a lot, and super excited to see how he grows in year 2 with that program. So, kind of building that template out in terms of, yes, we do have to sell, no doubt about it. We have to sell football and men's basketball from a revenue generation perspective, but you do have the opportunity to play in some different sandboxes where, maybe they don't get as much love and support and make a difference for them.
Well, and I'm going to just throw it out there. I mean, even from an ego trip, if you work on these, let's call them minor sports or the lesser revenue generated or whatever I can tiptoe around, the difference is they're going to know your name. They're going to, and I'm not just talking the athletes. I'm talking also anybody you work with, all the accounts you work with, the season ticket holders, the parents. Even before I started in athletics, when I was doing stuff at the school newspaper and would cover women's basketball, I had women's basketball parents that just thought I was the greatest thing ever because other people ignored them. And if you get to that, level, I mean, doesn't that also help you build relationships and understand rather than just, oh, yeah, you could just be replaced tomorrow because anybody can sell this? Look, you're an asset. And I just kind of look at it. You mentioned the professional development side. I think a lot of young folks, especially in our industry, totally discount the ways. And I'm sorry that, I wish that they were supported as much as, the bigger sports, but maybe they're not. But they got their little group. And I'd rather have the field hockey people and the lacrosse people know who I am, like they do at Davis, right? Rather than, just being a number at football. And football wasn't as big, but you know what I mean? Like it matters to be able to be known, right?
Yeah. No, again, I'm just giving another example here of somebody on our team. Daniel Calhoun has been serving, he's a ticket sales rep, and he's been serving on our soccer external pod, our women's soccer external pod. And he's been super committed to it. And you think about this, right? Eventually you're all going to have to deal if you're successful, right? And you want to move up, well, eventually you're going to have to know how to deal with, deal with coaches, right? And that's somebody that if you're on the business side of things, you're far removed from the inner workings of actually running a sport program and coaches and director of operations and all those folks that are involved. He's done such a great job of supporting that program and making himself known, making himself present, engaging with that crew. Where when the opportunity came open in terms of, we have leaders of all these external pods, somebody that really kind of runs point on it. When the opportunity came open here several months ago, and that person who was in that role left and moved on to a different organization, and so it was vacant. And Daniel was one of the first people that was brought up. And when we had to ultimately run it by our coaching staff to make sure they're okay with it, they were, could not be more supportive of it. They knew Daniel, they knew about him. It wasn't like he wasn't just a name on a Word document, right? Like he was a living, breathing person that they had interacted with. He shows up to all their camps during the summertime to table. He is out there when the World Cup was going on and we're doing viewing parties. He's out there for that. He's just with them, right? He lives it with them, and all kudos to him, because that's why I was able to earn the position of pod leader for that sport program. And that's just great experience for him that'll benefit him down the road when eventually he does get the opportunity, if he keeps growing, to work with maybe more high profile programs, maybe more complicated operations and stuff, but just invaluable learning lessons that he's been able to gain at a really young point in his career.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Sports podcast, focusing on the world of sports business. Download our free iPhone, iPad app in the iTunes App Store, an Android app available on Amazon to listen to the entire archive, or check out sportstao.com for more podcasts, blog posts, and videos. All episodes of the Tao of Sports podcast are copyrighted and trademarked.